complete we'll try to complete then generators. Once we complete modules and packages, we'll complete generators, and then from tomorrow onwards, possibly we'll try to look into the SQL aspects of it. So today we'll try to focus on modules and packages, and then see what are generators in Python. So that would be the agenda for today. So first thing is, let me try to create a file, and let's try to see how we can import that particular file somewhere. Right. And if we had seen earlier, right, yesterday we had ran a script, right? We ran a script. A file could be run as a script. That is what we had seen. And see, we also saw how to pass arguments to a file using sys package. We saw how to get the values into the file from the command line, right? So sys.argv of 1 and sys.argv of 2, we passed 10 and 20 to it, and then they got printed onto the screen. So this is how we capture the command line arguments from the file itself, or right, whenever they are passed from the command line to the file, then we can capture in the file in this fashion. So all that we did for this was we imported the sys module, right? That is what we did yesterday. So now every file is basically a module, and the module name is nothing but the file name. Okay. So let's try to create one file and see what it means. Why are we going for file? File essentially because we can retain the contents of it, or we are going for a script is to see that we can retain the contents of it. So what I'll do is I'll call this particular file as something. Give it a name. Let me call this file as compute numbers. Okay, and the extension of this file is .py. This is what we have been doing for the last few sessions, right? Now, in this particular thing, I just add few comments here for this file in this fashion. So I would say a module is a Python file, okay, containing some statements, right? It contains certain statements and certain functions or functionality, right? Or possibly some kind of definitions, right? That is what we could call as a module. And the name of the module is nothing but the file name, right? The name of the module or the name of the script, right, is nothing but the name of the file. In this case, it is compute numbers.py, right? So the name of the module is nothing but compute numbers.py. Now, if we had run this from the command prompt, probably we'll use Python and the file name or the Python and the module name. That is how we try to use it, or with the .py extension. When I say module, it is nothing but it is only this part, right? This is what we are referring to as module, not including .py, right? That is what we would refer to as module. So compute numbers is what is the module. Now, when we say this is a module, this particular file is nothing but a module. Whatever we write will belong to this particular module, compute numbers. That is what would become a module. Point number one is, what should we write in this particular file? So because this is a file and we can write anything, let's start writing some functions like this. So I would say sum of n, where we want to compute the sum of n numbers, right? So this is the function that we write, and I would like to perform the sum of these n numbers that we have. So I'll say n plus 1, so that till n it is getting those values, and then we can write it. And then I initialize a particular variable just above this for loop. I call that as total, and the value is initialized to 0. Right? And then for I in range of n plus 1, what would be the next step? Total plus equals I, right? That is what we are trying to write here. And then return total. Okay, so this is what we do. So total is equals to 0 for I in range of n plus 1. Start from 0 and end at n. N is also included. N plus 1 is not included, right? So this is our sum function. And we can add another function for this because this is a compute numbers. Let's also add something like product of n numbers. and I call this function product n, and input is a number n, or we could name this as n or num, right? And then here, the initialization would be for 1. I would initialize a product as 1. We want the product of n numbers, which is nothing but factorial, right? So here, I will try to do it in this fashion. First thing is for I in range of 1 to n plus 1. If I use 0, then it would be of no use, right? So that is something that you would not want to do. So I would say prod is equals to prod times I, or prod into equals I, right? This is what we want to do. And then finally, we want to return this prod, right? So I initialize from 1 and end at num plus 1. So all the values until num plus 1 are included, excluding num plus 1, right? That is what would happen. So we are getting a product of values in this case. So this is what we have done with this particular file called as computenumbers.py. Now we want to use this file somewhere else. We want to use this module elsewhere. So what we'll do is, one of the things that with respect to a module is, another property that we want to say about a module is that a module can be imported, right? This can be imported, or this module can be imported into some other modules. Okay, that is what we could do. Or if something is there with main, then there also it can be imported. So how do we do this, right? How do we import this? So what I'll do is I'll try to import this in another module. So I'll call this module test compute.py. This is what I'll try to do. So we have compute numbers.py, wherein we have two functions. Def sum of n, the input is n numbers. You have initialized total is equals to 0 for I in range of n plus 1. And within this for block, we have written total plus equals I and return total. So this is our sum of n numbers. And product of n numbers, prod is equals to 1. For I in range of 1 to num plus 1, prod is multiplied by I is assigned to again prod, and then finally we return prod. So this is what we have done. Okay. So once we do this, the next thing that I will try to do here is that here we would like to import the module compute numbers. Import the module compute numbers and test it. Right? This is what we'll try to do in this module. Fine. So when we want to import this, what we will do is we will simply say import compute numbers, right? That is what we will try to do. And then I will write this name equals underscore main. And then here we will try to print the numbers. But how do we use the module compute numbers? So we have imported the compute numbers module. So in order to use this module, we will say, or let's say we have sum of n numbers is compute numbers dot, and then we have sum of n numbers, right? Sum of n numbers is essentially we would like to compute for n, for 10. And similarly, we have prod n as the variable name. And then I use the module name compute numbers dot prod n, or the product n, and then we'll pass 5. So this should give us a value about 120, right? And then as we want to check what is the sum. So I would say sum of 10 numbers is, right? I would want to check that. So I will say sum n. And similarly, we want to kind of get the product of 5 numbers. right? So this is what I try to do here, and then prod n. Okay, so this is what I am trying to do here. All right, and then just check if the values are coming correctly or not. But where are this sum n and product n? They are not in this particular file or not in this particular module. They are available in compute numbers. So if we hover over this particular function sum n and then use control, right? It will go to this particular file. All that we have to do is hover over this, use control and then click it. This will act as a link and then it will point to the function in the another file or in another module. So it takes us to that particular function, right? So we have this particular function here, and then we want to test if these values are correct or not, right? So it says sum of 10 numbers is 55, product of 5 numbers is 120, right? So that is how we will be able to use modules. Now this is how we can use it. Let's say I want to use this particular module without, or we want to use this function without really using the complete module name. In such case, what we can do is from compute numbers, import sum n. Okay, that is what we can do. We have imported only sum n. So I remove this. And let's say we remove this also. We have not imported it. Let's see what happens. Okay, it says it is not able to find it, right? That is what it is saying. It is saying it is not able to define it, or we are not able to find it. Or if I undo this and retain the module name, compute numbers.product n of 5, then this would work well, right? That is what we see here. So we have sum n, and this is also called as function. So I'll just, just change the variable name so that it is not really pointing to sum n which we have imported, right? Now we use this in this fashion and then we run it. And then we get the output and it would show 120 and 55. Sum is 55 and the product is 120. Right? That is what we see. We can do in this way. Now let's say instead of doing like this, I want to call this as Sn, right? What I have done is I've given an alias name or an alternative name for sum n. So this sum n should be used as Sn. Wherever we want to use this, we can use this as Sn. So if I put this as Sn also, where sum n is short formed as Sn or an alternative name, right? We can use in this fashion as well. Okay. So we can use sum n is equals to sum n of 10. If we are not using this particular as symbol, this would be working correct. We can just replace this as like this, sum n of 10. But let's say I want to use some other notation. If the function name is very big and we want to shorten it for understanding in this particular module, then I can use it as an as, okay, which is an alias for the particular name, and then we can use it. Right? And then we get the output. So we get 55 and 120. Right? This is how we will be able to use it. So there are multiple ways in which we can use this. One way is to import the module and then module name dot that particular definition or a function name or the variable name, whatever we want to use it. Right? That is how we can use it. Or we can use the second way of importing it from the module name, import what is to be used. So sum n as Sn. Now we want to remove this one also. We want to remove compute numbers dot product n, right? I want to remove this and then use it. Then what I'll do is I'll put a comma and then call as product n, right? So sum n is referenced as Sn with as Sn in this file, and we can use product n. We have also imported that in this file or in this module, and we'll be able to use it. Right? So we get the name error. Product n is not defined because probably I have to use it as a separate line. So let me try to use this. So from compute numbers, import product n. Okay, now this would work. So we will be able to use it and we get the output. Fine, we can import in this fashion. Let's say we do not want to use this alias here. Then we want to import everything that is there in compute numbers, right? We want to import everything. Then we can do something like this: from compute numbers import star as a wildcard, indicating that we want to import everything that is there in compute numbers. And then I can remove these two lines, or let me comment these lines. Right, I've imported everything from compute numbers that is there, and I started using in this file. Right, we started using this in this file, so that becomes available within this file, and we'll be able to use it. What's happened? What did it say? It says compute numbers is not available.
You have to import from.
Sorry?
So,
you mean to say from this is available, right? Compute numbers, it says it is not available. You have used compute numbers is not defined, is it? Name error, compute numbers. Is the spelling is correct, right?
yeah.
We can import it. Yeah, it is working now. Pause. Let me try to do this. Yes, right. Possibly it took time to get compiled, and then or getting in. It is basically compiling itself. So this is what is happening. Anyways, yeah. So if you want to import everything from that module, we can use this as import star. Or if you want to use only a few of them, let's say I do not want to import everything like what we have in this file. We just want to import what is needed, right? We want to use only sum and end product n. Then we can use using a comma, right? Sum n comma product n, right? So that is how we will be able to use it. Only what is needed. So this would be a best practice rather than writing this as star, right? It is always better to use what is needed within that file. Otherwise, I'm sorry, I think I'm writing computers. So compute import, what is needed in the file is needed. We need to import them separated by a comma, right? That is how we'll be able to import and then start using them within this file. Okay. So this also works in this fashion. So whenever we have a lot of them, let's say we are doing 4 or 5 or 6, something like that, and only about 10 definitions are there or 10 variables are there in the module, and then possibly star is okay. But if it is a very big file, right, and there are a lot of definitions, a lot of functions, a lot of functionalities involved, and we kind of bring everything into this file, then it is not a best practice. So it is better to use it in this format when we have only limited kind of imports being made, right? So this is one way of doing it rather than doing a star. All right. So any questions on this? Right. So this is essentially a module that we have defined. Next, what we'll do is, see, why are we doing this is to structure our code. All that we are trying to do is to organize our code or structure our code when we want to have multiple files being located, right? Or when we are using a lot of files, this is what we want to do. Then we are trying to do this. So let's say we want to organize certain functionality in a particular place. So let me try to take a file. Okay, I'll call this file let's say test module .py. I call this module file as, or the module as test module.py. I open this, and all that we want to do is we want to organize our code into different directories. Let's take one example, right? We'll take an example of gaming, right? That is what we do, and we want to put everything within the gaming folder. Fine, and this would be our top level directory or folder. And that is what we'll try to use. Okay, gaming will be our top level directory or folder, and we'll organize our code. And for this gaming, we'll have games. Okay, we'll have games, and we will have admin. There could be other functionality, rendering is there, sound effects is there, all that would be there. But right now, we'll not dig into all of them. Let's say for our gaming project that we are trying to do, we will provide some games and we'll have some admin related stuff to it. Okay, that is what we'll try to do with this gaming project. Or a very simple, all that we are trying to do is see how we can organize our code. Okay, so I'll start with gaming, and then we add in the gaming is what we'll add is underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py. This file we add. This is nothing but an initialization file, so that this directory becomes started behaving like a package, right? We are packaging all of our code into a directory or into a directory structure, right? That is what we are essentially using packages for, to organize or structure our code. So the top level package is called as gaming, and within it we have underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py file. That is what we add. And after this, at the next level, right, I add the games sub package. Okay, we add the game sub package. So this is the top level package, and then in the sub package, this is a games sub package. Fine. And within this game sub package, we'll again have underscore underscore init. So the moment we add a package or a sub package, we add this particular file underscore underscore init to it. Okay, so this also I'll give little bit of space to indicating that this is under gaming. Okay, within gaming, and games is also within gaming, right? And init py is within games. Okay, that is what we are trying to understand from this. All right, and then the next file that we add is askgames.py, and then we'll have play games or play game rather. Then I'll say ask game and then play game.py, and then we'll have score game.py. Okay, this is what we have added. And we add one more sub package as we discussed. We'll have games and admin within gaming. So I'll add admin. This is our another sub package. Okay, I call this another sub package within gaming, right? And within this admin, we'll add again, because this is a sub package, we'll add underscore underscore init.py. And within this, we'll add users.py. And then we'll add manage games.py. All right, that is what we'll be adding in this left side directory now. So, but before we do that, guys, please take a look at this. See if you have got this. Take about 5 minutes and try to create this with empty things. So first, left side, create a folder called as gaming, and then add one hyphen hyphen init hyphen hyphen, sorry, underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py file, and then we'll take it from there. Okay. So I have created this gaming folder in this Explorer in Visual Studio Code. And here I'll try to create a file. Okay, new file underscore init underscore .py. Okay, that is what I add here. So this is what I have added. This is an empty file. We can initialize here certain things. Also, we can add file names, etc. using underscore all, except we can do that. But for now, we'll leave it as it is. Okay. And within this gaming, we said we needed another folder, which is games and admin. There are two folders that we need, games and admin. So let me add new folder, games. Okay, and then we add admin. Okay, so I'm adding these two folders, and again, within these two folders, I again create this init py file underscore init underscore .py. Fine. So this is an again empty file. I just ignore it. Again, in games, I create an empty file, which is underscore init underscore .py. Okay. So I added these two files to these two modules or these two packages, admin and games. Okay. Now, next thing that we saw was you need to ask game.py. We need to add this ask game.py within games. So let me go there and say new file and then paste ask game.py. Okay, this is added and we'll come back to this file later. Fine. And again, play game.py. I go to games, new file, play games.py, hit enter. So there is a new file that we have created, and then we have score game.py. Okay, new file, score game.py. Right, so that is what we have done here. We have games, and then within it we had these four files. One is underscore init underscore .py, ask game.py, play game.py, and score game.py. So this is what we have added. Similarly, let's add these two files to gaming, or sorry, in admin, right? This is an admin, which is a sub package in gaming. So add this users.py, right? And then we have manage games.py, right? So I add that in. Okay, so this is what we have added. So we have created exactly like this. So we have gaming, admin, and games, right? So this is what we have, and everything is coming under this particular case. Let me not do that. So we have everything here. All right. So we have added these sub packages in the package called as gaming. Okay. Now we also have these files, and quickly what we'll do is we'll add some functionality, a very basic functionality, right? So ask game is essentially, we want to add two functions to it. Two functions would be here. One is essentially which game a user wants to play. So we say which game, and the other one would be, let's say, options game, right? So which games are there? He wants to play game, which game or which games, and probably we want to know if there are any other options, right? So that is what we will try to do here. So first thing is we'll do a quick thing. We'll not write exhaustive logic to it, but just try to close it like this. And possibly which game will have some input like game name. Okay, and then we'll say the name of the game is, or the game asked is game name. Right, we pass this variable, and similarly, all that I have to do is take this again, and what I'll do is I'll try to replace this name with another name, which we are calling as options game. So I use options game here, and various other options for this game are, I use the game name. Okay, So that is what I passed. Probably there should be something else. We have to do some kind of a logic. Okay. So this is askGame.py. Fine. So we are adding two functions to this, which game. It takes an input called as game name, and then we are quickly kind of doing this thing check, which is called as the game asked us. And similarly, we have options game, and then we are passing the input called as game name, and then we are printing this out. Okay. So this is what we have in ask game, and then we have play game. So for play game, we will quickly say, let's say in the play game, the user needs to play something, right? The user needs to play the game. So the functionality would be something like this: start game, right? And then he should get a game name which he wants to start, right? And then if he doesn't want to do it, he wants to start some other game, the restart or restart the same game, right? So that is what we'll try to add. So it would be something like this: start game, and then game name. Okay. And then want to print the output. So I'll say the game is started for, game is started, name is game, right? So this is what we'll do. The same thing for a restart game as well. So we call this as restart game. And then I just change this because all that we have to do is add re to this, and then everything would be restarted. The game is restarted, name is game, right? So it doesn't really have any logic, but we are trying to see how we can use this. Okay. So this is what we do for play game and ask game. The other file is score game. So in score game, the user has to score, or the gamer has to score for a game. For a game, and this is this logic we are putting in this module or in this file. And yes, there should be two things that we want to have. One is increased score, right? The other one is render score possibly. Okay, let us say he want the score should be rendered onto the screen once the score is increased. So we want to write some function to it, or we call render score from increase score, but we'll not get into that logic right now. We'll not be focusing on that, but instead we'll just have just say function increase score. Okay, and possibly just the score is increased. We'll try to, you have to pass the username and the game name, but then that's okay. The score is increased. And so I'm just leaving out the arguments that has to be passed to it. And then another thing that we want to do is we want to render score. Possibly in this function, again, I have to get the game username and the game name that the person is scoring, and probably where it has to be rendered. The score is rendered. Okay, so this is what we do. We add these things, play game, score game, and ask game. And each has certain functions to it. And then we have admin, right? In admin, we have users, right? And for user, what we have to do is for admin, right? For admin, the functionality should be to add users, right? Add users or remove users. Add users or remove users. That would be the functionality. So how do we write this? We'll just add two functions called as add user and remove user, right? That is what we'll try to have this in this module. So I create two functions, add user, and username has to be passed so that user is added. In the sense that we have to call a database and then do all such things, but then we have still not discussed databases. So I'll just write something here. So user is added, and then uname, right? User is added and then uname, and we want to remove the user, right? So remove user, uname, right? Print user is removed. Okay, and then we have you. And so that is what we'll have quickly for users.py. And then there is another thing which is called as manage games. So
Sir, in the previous,
sorry, what was that?
the remove user spelling is wrong.
Remove user. Okay, remove. Oh, yes. Okay, remove user. All right, thank you. So we did this in users.py, and then similarly we'll do for manage users. In manage users, what we'll try to do is we will try to manage the games, right? Or manage user, right? So we already did for users.py. So I'll just rename this instead of games. Yeah, manage games is still okay. So we'll manage the games we did for users. So what we'll do is we'll have functionality for managing the games. So essentially we'll try to do this thing. We'll say add game and then remove game probably. If we want to add new games or we want to remove an existing game from our list of gaming zone, then we'll try to do this. And the same thing is essentially what we did for users, add game. And then we add the game name, right? So I'll call this game has been added, right? And then I pass the game name, right? And similarly, we want to remove the game. So I say remove game, game name, and then game has been removed, and then we have game. Okay, so this is what would be manage games.py. We had admin for users and admin for games as well, right? So that is what we have. So now we want to use these modules. So all of them are in gaming, right? Or we want to use them externally. So we have this test module where we have created a file which is outside gaming, right? So we have this test module or test compute, whatever is there. We are having this outside gaming. So we are using test module right now. So our package is basically gaming package, and then it has sub packages. So let's try to use them. How do we kind of use these packages, right? So name is equals to underscore underscore main, and then I initially pass it, and then we'll add the functionality to it. So import gaming dot, we can import games, okay, or admin. So we can do games, and then we want to import ask game, right? That is what I do. And here I say ask game dot I think I missed something. Ask game is not coming up. Okay. And then one second. So gamings.games import ask game, and then let me call this as variable. Let's say I'll just use this ask game dot which game, right? And then I pass the game name F1 Racing. All right, so this is how I'll try to use it. So these are our packages and sub packages, and then we import the module. And the module has two functions, which is which game and options games. So if you hover over this, right, whatever we have commented is what is highlighted. So what we have commented in ask game, right? So if you look at this, this is what we have commented, and that is what would be the description displayed or viewed when we hover over it, right? It says two functions would be here. which game and options game. That is what we have here. Right. So now I have imported this one, or if you want to use this as AG, then I rename this as AG.which game. Right. So this is how we can import different modules elsewhere. And we are passing this, and let us try to run this and see what is the output. And we say the game asked is F1 racing, right? So the call is going to this particular page, which is which game, and it is printing out whatever is there, right? So that is how we can use ask game. Similarly, let's say we want to use admin, right? Import, what was there in import? Users as UG. So then I can use this in this fashion, UG.add user Mayank, add user Mayank. Okay. So that is what I'll be using here, and then okay, user is added Mayank, and game asked is F1 racing for ask game. So anything that we want to import, let's say we want to use manage, or we want to get everything from admin, right? So we'll say import star, right? I remove users, and what is there in it? We have manage games. Manage games, right? Manage games dot, what is there in manage games? Add games. Why is this not coming from admin? I think I have to do manage and then do an import star, then only then I'll be able to use the functionality that is there in it. So add game, and then let's say F1 racing or F2 racing. Okay, so I just add this particular game to manage games, and then this gets called, right? So when we use a star, all of this functionality that is there in that particular module is imported. So we use the packages and the modules in this fashion, and then whatever the functions are there, that would be called or that would be imported in this particular module. So this is how we'll be able to import packages and the respective modules in some other module. All right. So this is how we'll be able to use them. So any questions on this?
I have one question, Jay.
Uh-huh.
So like from import statements, right? The first one, we are just importing, we are giving the package and importing the module, right?
Correct.
So in the second one, you said like import star. So like why did it work? Because it has to import all the modules from that package, right?
Correct. So what I did was, if we are trying to import all the modules, right, the functionality would not be available, or which functionality belongs to which module will not be available, na?
So it should be specific to that module, right?
Correct. So if I am doing for manage games, we have all of these functions that are there, and whatever is there within that module, when I do star, it understands that it is only for that module.
Okay.
Now, if we have multiple modules and when we do star, let's say we have the same function, correct?
Okay.
In such a case, the same function name refers to which module name? That will be a problem, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That
got
wouldn't
it.
work. So that so we have to be specific in importing the module and then provide the star, so that only belonging to that particular module or file will be imported. Everything from that file.
Okay.
Right? Does this answer your question? So that it removes the ambiguity.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a. Can't I write from gaming import star, and while calling that add game function, can't I write it like admin dot manage games dot add game?
Can you just ping it once? Probably I didn't get it. From gaming.star and then?
No, can I just write like from gaming
Uh-huh.
import star?
From gaming import star, but then which module probably
And
we have
while
to,
while in main, when I'm calling that add game function,
right.
can't I write it like admin dot manage games dot add game?
We have to just check that once. I'm not sure if that will work, but just check it. I'm not sure, but you need to check that once. Because it will
Okay.
import all of them that is there in gaming, but then when we try to use the reference, will it be available or not? I'm not sure, because whenever we use a module, we import everything from that module to remove ambiguity. But also please check that. Probably I need to check that once.
Yeah.
So let's see that. And so instead of doing this, we are essentially saying from gaming import star and then use the complete name of it, right? Probably we want to use admin dot manage games dot, or probably we'll use instead of import. What did we have? We had gaming and the other one was games, right? Admin and games. So games dot, and then we have to use ask game. We already did that. So let's say we say play game. And in play game, we had start game, right? Say, yeah, games is not getting identified if we are trying to do that that way.
Or if I just say import gaming there.
Instead of this, you want to say import gaming, then only gaming, then probably we have to start using gaming.games. That might work, gaming.games, and then this will work.
Yeah.
This will work. But if we are trying to do a star, probably it is not getting the namespace correct. This would work. Okay, this complete path will work, and probably if I comment this out, right, and then let's say we comment this also, this would work. This would be a fair thing to do, because now we know what is there in gaming and we are explicit in where it should be called, and so now this works. Let me execute and show it as well. So as happened, gaming has no attribute. Yeah, now it is not a module. I see. So this is not a module, right? So it will not be able to fetch it. This is a package, right? So yeah, this doesn't work properly. This is syntactically correct, but it doesn't make any sense because it is not a module and it will not be able to import everything that is there. It just behaves as a logical entity, nothing to do with what we are trying to add or check the functionality. Right, so that doesn't work. Gaming has no attribute, so that is what it will look for. So yeah, that wouldn't work properly. It is only looking for an object that is being identified. So if we are trying to, it understands that it is a sub package, but then there is nothing that identifies as an object. So that is why when we run it, it shows as an error, but it does not highlight when we try to, put it in the code. All right, so that is what happens. Okay, so any other questions or queries on this, guys? How we are trying to identify or what we're trying to do with modules and packages. Packages are essentially for structuring the code or organizing our code. All right, if there are no questions, then what we'll do is we'll go on to the next topic, which is essentially generators and yield. That is what we'll try to do. So let me call this file, another file. And then let me save this file. What would we call this? this is miscellaneous because they're doing it afterwards. So I thought this is miscellaneous. And then we shall focus on generator or yield. Okay. So generator is essentially what we'll do here. And yield is essentially used in place of return, but it returns, it can return, or I could say yield can return multiple values, and what it returns is called as a generator object. Generator object is what it returns. Okay, that is what yield would be used for. So that is how we'll be able to use it. So that is what we have. And in order to use it, let's take an example and see how yield works. Okay, yield is essentially used in place of return. So where do we use return? In a function, right? That is what we know. So let me try to use a function or call a function, get even numbers. Okay, and I pass the maximum value until which we want to find the even numbers. Okay, that is what is passed as input num. And we will use yield here. Okay, yield is what will be used in this function, is used in this function. Okay, and when we say multiple values, what does it mean? That till the iteration is done. For example, we have something like this, range of num. Okay, that is what we have for I in range of num. And if I divided or modulo by 2 equals 0, means when we get the remainder as 0, that is when a number is divided by 2 and the remainder is 0, then we get the output as even, and I want to yield it. Okay, and I use this particular keyword called as yield, and I would like to yield the value which is even. So what happens here is this value doesn't get returned immediately. Only when this for loop is completed and it has all the set of values, right, the yield kind of returns, or it goes back to the place from where it is being called. All right. So when it is being called, it returns the value, and we'll try to test this. How do we test this? Is that I would like to get the generator object back. What it returns is a generator object. So I call this get even nums. And what I pass is till 10, I want all the even numbers. And we know the even numbers are 2, 4, 6, 8, right? That is what we get the even numbers as. But then we'll first print what is returned first, right? Let us see what is getting returned. Okay, so let us look at the type of it. So it says the type of it is a generator object, right? A function returns a generator. What it is returning is called as generator. Fine. So this is what happens. And when we print it, we get a generator object representation of it, right? That is what we get here. Now we want to use the generator object to retrieve the values or see what has been returned. And this generator object is an iterable. Iterable is something on which we can iterate. Okay, iterable object is something on which we can iterate, or iteration can be performed. Right, that is what is an iterable. So range of num values is an iterable object. We can iterate over. Generator is something that we can iterate over. It is an iterable object. Right, list, dictionary, tuple, and set are also iterables. Right, this is what iterable means, something that we can iterate over. And the other thing is, for certain iterable objects, we have a function called as next, or we can iterate over them. So what does this mean is, first thing is we'll try to iterate over. How do we iterate over? We know we have the for loop, and then we have the generator object. So I call something like this, or let us, I is okay. For I in numgen, and then I want to print out the values that the function has returned. Separator is equals to this particular value. Fine. Right, we get 0 instead of separator. I should do end because that is what will work on a single line. So if you want an output on a single line, we have to use end is equals to space, so that everything is printed on one single line. That is what would be the change. And if you want to add something else, let's say I want to add separator as comma or colon, etc., then probably we can use that. So generally it is space, right? That is what we get the space as. Oops. It's not working. Oh, okay, fine. Let us leave this for now. I see that later. Okay. So for now, we get this value 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8, right? That is what we do here. So because we are appending end with the particular value, we are trying to get that everything in a single line. Okay. So now we get these values on a single line. Now, after that, what we'll try to do is we'll see if we can convert this into a list, right? So I'll just comment this out for a moment and then come back to this. Fine. Let me comment this out. And then I say, instead of doing this, I say print list of numgen. Okay, this is what I do. So we're getting a generator object, and then we are passing that generator object or an iterable to a list so that it prints out list of values. What has happened? Something is getting printed. They call something else. Yes, now it is coming. All right. So now we see this. The values are 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. I forgot the comma, right? Previously, yeah. I'll come back to that later, but I had something important, so I didn't go to it. So we'll do that as well. Now, for now, what I want to do is like we have to print this as a list, right? That is what I did. So we got the generator object. I passed the generator object to list, and it printed out the list of values. So for now, yield is giving all the values at once, right? It is giving all the values at once in a generator object, and in that generator object, we are able to retrieve them. So let's say I uncomment the previous set of statements, okay, and I try to reuse them in the code and see what happens with the generator object now. All right, so I ran this and it says it's an empty list, right? This is what it is showing us. So once we use the generator object, we iterate over the generator object, it no longer has any values. It can only be done once. The generator object can only be done once. If you want to do it again, we have to call that function again and then retrieve the values. So generator object will hold the values or once it is iterated or once it is converted to list. Let's say I change this sequence of steps. Instead of doing this here, I put print list of numgen and then we have iterator here. Let's see how the output. Now, previously the output was like this, right? We had 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 and then the list of values. Now I do this. Now we get the list of values and that's it. It doesn't iterate over. Meaning that we cannot have any values. It will iterate. So for this for loop will iterate only if this particular object is having some values. If the values are not there, then it will not iterate. Now, since the values are not printed, it means that the for loop is not getting executed. It is not getting executed. The reason is the values have been exhausted and generator can only be used once. Is this fine, guys? Is this clear? You just have to change these steps to see what is happening with respect to the generator object. Okay, I do this again, go back to the previous way of arranging the code where we had the for loop and finally the list of the generator and passing it to print. So let me try to run this again. And now, oops, what happened? Says numgen is some problem. numgen is not defined. We defined it, right? Something is wrong. So let me try to run this again. Yeah, now it looks like some other file is getting executed. Okay, so now it returns a empty list, right? We have 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 and an empty list. So as we see here, we get this empty list, and previously when we did a list of this, the list was retrieved and then the generator is empty, so it does not iterate over. Fine. So this is what is happening with respect to a generator. Generator can only be used once. Once we get the yield of values and the generator object is returned, we can use it only once. We cannot reuse it again and again. Fine. So once the generator becomes empty, we get a empty list when we pass the generator to the list. Okay. So this is one thing. And all right, yeah, we'll come back to that. Probably I have to replace the comma in the separator and then try to use the end properly, right? That is something that got missed. Right, I just have to check that. Probably we'll come back to it later. So now this is the output that we get. So the next thing is, like, once we do this, instead of doing this, we want to get an element once, or probably we want to get one element at a time, right? We can also do that. So I'll say next of numgem. Now the first element would be got. When I do this next of numgen, the first value is 0. I call it again, print again next of numgen, so which is on generators with having numbers. So next value will be 2. After 0, the next value will be 2. Right? We get 2 and so on and so forth. So and so on and so forth. And I call this multiple times and see what happens. Okay. So 2, 4, 6, 8, and for the next thing, there is nothing could be called. I mean, we cannot get the next number. There is nothing else after 8, right? 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 got executed. This particular call, the next would not get any value because it is empty. So it cannot iterate over, and then it throws an error called as stop iteration, right? This is what it kind of throws us back, right? We cannot iterate over. So this statement is unnecessary. If we do this, then we'll not be able to get the values. So, right? So we get 2, 4, 6, 8. So this is also one way of checking if the values are exhausted or not. And we convert into, once we convert that into list, then we can iterate over. That becomes much more easier, right? So this is also something that we can do with respect to the generator object. Right? We have already seen multiple ways of dealing with the generator object. Fine. So this is another way of doing it. Now the same thing for a use case, right? What is the use case for this? We got all the even numbers. The other way to check is, let's say we did one use case earlier, which is get Fibonacci, and I pass the num value until what value we want to get the Fibonacci series generated. The same logic I'll use. A comma b is equals to 0 comma 1. We initialize two variables as a comma b and 0 comma 1. I'm not going through the Fibonacci series again. We know it is 0 comma 1 comma 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 5 comma 8 comma 13 comma 21, right? And this is what would be our Fibonacci series, etc. 34, etc. So that would be our Fibonacci series, right? And I want to get the values, all of the values at once, right? Rather than printing them out in the while loop, I want to get them. So I say yield of A, fine. That is what should be yielded. This is num. This should be yielded. And here we then swap the values, right? Within the while loop, right? Within the while loop, A comma B is equals to B comma A plus B. Right, we swap the values and we get the output. So let's check this, right? I hope this is something that is clear. We have already seen what is Fibonacci and the logic is same. So I'll call this here. I call this generator that we get from Fibonacci as FibGen, and the number that we pass would be 35. Okay, that is what we would be passing. And then I would just try to print them as list of values for now. Fifth gen. Okay, that is what would be printed out, and we have seen this logic. So initialize two values, 0 to 1. This is what we have done. And once this is done, 1 should be assigned to A, and the next value, A plus B, should be assigned to B, right? So we should get 1, 1, right? We should get 1, 1, and that is what is happening here. We're assigning them. After this, 1, 2 should come. So that is what will happen. 1, 2 will come immediately. Right, so that is how we are trying to get the values. Okay, so let me run this quickly and see the output for ourselves. B is not defined, is it? We did define B, right? 0, 1. A comma B is, I'll say B is not defined. We have defined outside the while loop and get fib A comma B is equal to 0, 1. So logic is correct. A comma A plus B, while A is less than num. This is what we are passing. And yield of A, and that is what I called it. Let me run it again and see what it does. Num is not defined. We have defined the num as well. Or let me try to name this as n instead of num. Oh, the indentation is good. We check that once. Yes, indentation is good. This one is also good. B comma A plus B and A comma B equals 0, 1. We have commented this out. All right, let me save this and just let me check this again. Yeah, probably it was not saved. Okay, so this is what I did. So we are calling this, and I got the generator. So what did we do here? Within the while loop, we said A is less than n, and yield of A comma B is equals to B comma A plus B, right? So we have this, and it generates as we expected the values as 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20, 34. Let's say if we want to iterate over the same way what we did, so we can have this in this fashion. After we generate the fib gen, all that we have to do is, instead of num gen, I replace our iterable logic with fib gen, and then print list and see what happens here now. So we get the values and the empty list as well, right? Does that sound good, guys? Was this clear? All right, so we use the Fibonacci logic here, and then got the generator object using yield, right? We wanted to get the sequence of Fibonacci series less than a particular number. That is what we did, 35, and then we got the Fibonacci series back using the generator, right? And then when we pass the generator to the list, after it got exhausted, it shows an empty list, and this is the expected output. All right, so there are multiple ways that we can attack the Fibonacci series problems. We had seen how to use it using lists. We have seen how to use it using generators and also using simple while loops as well. That is something that we have seen earlier, right? So these are the multiple ways in which we can do this, okay? So these are some of the aspects that we could have covered earlier, but then some of that got missed. So we are covering generators and the yield yield statement here. So we have covered this as well. I think we have covered most of it that was needed for the basics of Python. The other aspects that are there is essentially, object-oriented programming is something that we would need. And then possibly if time permits or if we come back again, maybe we'll also look at algorithms and data structures, because for some of the data structures to be created, we would need OOPS concepts. Okay, if you have to create linked list or double linked list, etc., or we are going for trees and higher or graphs, then we have to create a class for it. And for that, we would have to know what is hoops, okay? Or we have to know what is a class and etc. We need to understand the basics of hoops and then start doing them, implement them in Python. So that is what would be needed. But then what we'll continue with is going forward is SQL, right? That is what we'll start tomorrow. We'll start with SQL, complete SQL, and then see how it goes. And probably we can come back to Python later. Okay, so any questions on these, folks? All right, if there are no questions, then we will stop the class today. See you tomorrow. We'll begin with SQL, RDBMS is starting tomorrow. And one thing that I would need is we will be covering MySQL or MySQL. That is what we'll be focusing upon. There are other databases like Postgres, SQL Server, etc., which might take longer time to install, etc. So let us start or begin with MySQL. So have your laptops with MySQL ready. So that is where we'll start our queries. We'll start executing them in MySQL. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Till then, goodbye and good night.